In this video, I'm hoping to discuss chapters 14 to 16. So I'm going to move along quickly here. So in chapter 14, we can see the changes in Pip since he's been going to Sada's house. I'm going to open the chapter here. It is a most miserable thing to feel ashamed of home. There may be black ingratitude in the thing, and the punishment may be retribution and well-deserved, but that is a miserable thing, I can testify. Home had never been a very pleasant place to me because of my sister's temper, but Joe had sanctified it, and I had believed in it, and so on. Within a single year, all this was changed. Now it was all coarse and common, and I would not have had Miss Havisham and Estella see it on any account. How much of my ungracious condition of mind may have been my own fault, how much Miss Havisham's, how much my sister's, is now of no moment to me or to anyone. The change was made in me. The thing was done, well or ill done, excusably or inexcusably, it was done. So, we're kind of seeing this loss of innocence beginning here, and this awareness of right and wrong, and that in fact Pip is kind of going the wrong direction, and he sees it happening, and but he's sort of succumbing to this moral breakdown. He describes later on the page his life, which he thinks of as if a thick curtain had fallen on all its interest and romance to shut me out from anything save dull endurance anymore. Never has that curtain dropped so heavy and blank as when my way in life lay stretched out straight before me through the newly entered road of apprenticeship to Joe. So he's using this curtain as a metaphor that kind of talks about, he's comparing his life, and it's just been like completely barriered. He can't get out. It's barring him. It's keeping him from experiencing what he wants, right? From pursuing great things. It's just kind of keeping him in. And then the other one is he talks about how he would stand at the churchyard and look, and he would compare my own perspective with the windy marsh view and making out some likeness between them by thinking how flat and low both were, and how on both there came an unknown way and a dark mist, and then the sea. I was quite as dejected. So here what we see is now he's looking out, and he just like sees his existence as just being flat, dull, covered in mist, leading to the sea. No hope, no hope. He says, I'm dejected. Now, his one consolation, he tells us, is that he never breathed a murmur to Joe while his indentures lasted. So he, kept his feelings from Joe. But he's really wavering between right and wrong here. He knows what he should be doing, and he knows that Joe is the good one, but his desire for a better life are tormenting him and make him despise what he has. So on page 98, he says, it is not possible to know how far the influence of any amiable, honest-hearted, duty-doing man flies out into the world, but it is very possible to know how it has touched one's self in going by, and I know right well that any good that intermixed itself with my apprenticeship came of plain, contented Joe, and not of restlessly aspiring, discontented me. So remember, we talked about Joe as kind of that moral educator for him. So we can see that happening, and also just this distinction between Joe's, humility and virtue and hardworking, just kind of nature, whereas we get Pip, who is so driven and ambitious for prestige, for privilege, for wealth, that he can't be, happy with anything. And then in chapter 15, we learn that that Pip is continuing to pursue education, and he actually is wanting to impart education to Joe, although he admits that it's really that he might be worthier of my society and less open to Estella's reproach. That's really sad. And I wish that I could say that I've never been like Pip, but I know times when I have. I know times where, I've been humiliated by family or wanted to change family so that other people would think higher of me. Or, I remember as a teenager just kind of being kind of mean-spirited to different friends because I thought they weren't the kind of friends that would benefit me. And I just, I feel what Pip's feeling, how I felt, disgraced by things and wanted to change them. And instead of respecting that person with, the weaknesses, the deficiencies, it's family, it's friends, you love them, right? So I can get how Pip feels. So he's trying to do this. We also in chapter 15 meet Joe's awful forage worker Orlick. And Orlick was always tormenting Pip when he was younger and is really jealous, not jealous, but suspicious of Pip, thinking that now that he's apprenticing, that he's going to end up taking the spot. And there's just a lot of conflict there. And then Pip convinces Joe to give him half a day off so that Pip can go and visit Miss Havisham, even though Joe advises against it, doesn't think this is a great idea, but we know that Joe is kind of driven by his ambition and he's going to pursue this. Then Orlick gets wind of this and he says that he deserves a day off. And so we have this incredible scene and Mrs. Joe gets involved and there's a lot of ugly things happening here, okay? So then we have, in fact, Pip going into town to see Miss Havisham. He gets there, and unfortunately, Estella has gone abroad, and he is incredibly sad about that and feeling dejected. He says, Miss Havisham tells him, abroad, educating for a lady, far out of reach, prettier than ever, admired by all who see her. Do you feel that you have lost her? There was such a malignant enjoyment in her utterance of the last words, and she broke into such a disagreeable laugh that I was at a loss what to say. So then he leaves. Okay. It's really rude. And then so Pip is wandering around all upset. He runs into Mr. Wopsle, and Mr. Wopsle is going to read a play at Mr. Pumblechook's house. So he invites Pip along, so Pip gets to be a part in this play called George Barnwell. And in this play, the character George Barnwell is actually, he's sort of ends up murdering his uncle for sort of financial gain. If he kills the uncle, then he gets money and on and on. And he says here on the bottom, page 106, what stung me was the identification of the whole affair with my unoffending self. When Barnwell began to go wrong, I declare that I felt positively apologetic. Pumblechook's indignant stare so taxed me with it. Wopsle, too, took pains to present me in the worst light. At once ferocious and maudlin, I was made to murder my uncle with no extenuating circumstances whatever. Millwood put me down in argument on every occasion. It became sheer monomania in my master's daughter to care a button for me, and all I can say for my gasping and procrastinating conduct on the fatal morning is that it was worthy of the general feebleness of my character. Even after I was happily hanged and Wopsle had closed the book, Pumblechook sat staring at me and shaking his head and saying, take warning, boy, take warning, as if it were a well-known fact that I contemplated murdering a near relation, providing I could only induce one to have the weakness to become my benefactor. Lots of parallels here. There's, again, this kind of foreshadowing. Is Pip going to do something like that? Is he going to betray someone? What's going to happen? And again, another reference to a hanging. So Pip's going to hang himself, metaphorically, right? So lots going on there. When they're on their way back, so he's on his way back after all of this, late at night, he runs into Orlick, who's also on his way back. They run into some police. There's all kind of commotion at the pub. Mr. Wopsle's wondering what's going on. They rush home and find out that Mrs. Joe has been attacked. And we notice some of the details of the attack, that there's like a weapon used against her, and it's a chain that would have been on a convict's leg iron, it's called. So another reference to this leg iron. Pip deduces that the perpetrator must be one of two men. He doesn't think it's his convict, but he thinks it might be that other guy that he saw in the pub that night, or he thinks it might be Orlick because Orlick is so mean. He doesn't know, right? And Pip is consumed by guilt because, the weapon is the thing that, he kind of was involved in or complicit in because he stole the file and so on. So more guilt consumes him. And Mrs. Joe has like serious brain damage and can't talk, and she becomes an invalid.